Hello out there to all of my fellow gold diggers. This is your girl Rita, also known as the self-proclaimed gold digger, coming to you with another video on today. And in one of my previous videos, I shared with you about my student loan debt. I told you upon graduation, I had about $200,000 worth of student loan debt, of which I had paid about $130,000 towards, but still had $147,000 left to pay. I am an optometrist. I went to optometry school. So today's video, I will be talking to you about whether or not I feel optometry school was worth it. Is optometry school worth it? Okay. Now, there are people in the optometry field who say that optometry might not be as sustainable, like it may be going in the way of pharmacists, like how you see pharmacy, like most pharmacists, they work for a commercial place. There's not a lot of private practice pharmacists or whatever, and they're saying like that's what optometry might be headed towards, or they complain about insurance reimbursements, all that kind of stuff. And some even say like, hey, they're questioning whether or not they would recommend optometry to their child, that kind of thing. So let's talk about it today, about whether or not optometry school is worth it. And I have a few points that we are going to cover. So the first thing that I'm going to mention to you when I'm considering whether or not optometry school was worth it is the average salary of an optometrist. Now, keep in mind, this will vary by setting. Like if you work in a corporate location, if you work at a private practice, if you work for an ophthalmologist, or if you work at in a hospital setting or for a VA. Depending on the type of setting, your salary is likely going to vary. It's also going to vary based on how long you've been out of school, like whether or not you're a new grad or someone who has been out in the field and working for a while. It also varies whether or not you are full-time versus part-time. So there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to the salary. I did pull some stats, and I am going to be referring to my notes when it comes to the stats and everything, but just keep that in mind. These stats do not break down like what kind of modality the person was in, or if it's full-time people, part-time people, that kind of thing. So the first thing I'm going to share is this was a study from Forbes back in November of 2019. Now, this listed it had the top 10 highest paying states for optometrists. So I'm just going to give you a few of them. Ranked at number 1 was North Dakota, with the average salary being $175K. Number 5 was Massachusetts, with the average salary being around $142K. And number 10 was Minnesota, with the average salary being about $134,000. So those were the top 2. Shout out to South Carolina, which is where I'm from. They were listed at number 4. So I actually live in South Carolina. I practice in Georgia because I'm right on the border, but they said that at number 4, South Carolina had an average salary of $142K. So I included that just because I'm from that, but let me find out that's where the money reside. Maybe I need to cross over that river and open me up a practice there. I don't know, but we'll see. But South Carolina, 142K. So those were the top 10. Now the bottom 10, or the states where optometrists are paid the least, ranking at the lowest was Utah, with the average salary only being $74,490. So don't go to Utah. Number 5, the lowest of that in number 5 was South Dakota, with the average salary being $96,540. And number 10 was Louisiana at $104,360. Now, another report, the U.S. News from 2019, says that the average salary, I guess, across all the states and stuff like that is $115K, with the top 25% making around $143K and the bottom 25% making around $88K. And it also says another study shows that it does vary by year, like you've been out of school. So in your first year, it says pay scale states that you'll make around 100K, versus if you've been practicing for 5 to 9 years, 112K. If you've been practicing 10 to 19 years, the average salary is around 117K. And if you've been practicing for 20 years or more, average salary is around 125K. Now, I look at these statistics. Like I said, statistics, you have to make sure you take them in context as well. But just looking at these statistics, like if my first year I'm making $100,000, and by the time I'm practicing for 20 plus years I'm only making $125,000, that's only $1,000 raise per year. I'm like, that's not really saying a whole lot. Like over a span of 20 years, all I increased in my salary is about 25,000, which tells me at a certain level or a certain limit, once you get to a certain salary range, your salary is pretty flat or stable or whatever. But like I said, take into consideration, I don't know where these statistics came from, like what type of setting these doctors were practicing in. So you do want to consider that when it comes to that, because I'll share with you my story. So I remember my first year of practicing, I was only working part-time. I was working like 3 days out of the week, and like 2 Saturdays a month or whatever. So it was like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then 2 Saturdays out of the month. I remember that first year I made about $85,000. But I was self-employed, or I was an independent contractor, which means I was paying my own taxes. So if you take that, like if I think when I paid it, it was like I had to pay about 30% of my income into taxes. So when you take that into consideration, I only made like 60,000 that year, which you might say is not too bad since I was only working like 3 days out of the week or whatever. But also take that into consideration, because I don't know if these numbers take like, are these doctors self-employed? Are they employed by someone? Because if they are self-employed, which a lot of optometrists are, or they're considered independent contractors working for different places, that self-employment tax is really going to eat into your salary. And that's something that they don't say, and that's something that these statistics do not show. All right, so that is one thing I would take into consideration, is the salary. How much money are you going to be making? How are you going to be making that money? Like what type of setting are you going to be working in? And are you going to be like an employee, or are you going to be self-employed? Now, the other thing I would take into consideration is the average cost of optometry school. So when I was looking up the information, the average cost of school was anywhere between, on average, it was around like between $40,000 to $45,000. Now, I graduated with $180,000, which puts it at around $45,000 a year. So I think that is pretty accurate. Now, keep in mind, optometry school is not like medical school. It's not like law school or anything like that. There's only 23 optometry schools in the country, and one of them is in Puerto Rico. Oh, Puerto Rico. But so just consider that. And there was even less when I went to optometry school. I think it was only like 17 when I went. So chances are you are going to be going out of state. But let's break it down. There are 14 private optometry schools. There are 9 public schools. And I got these statistics from SCO, the Southern College of Optometry. And SCO is one of the private schools, but they do offer regional tuition, so like in-state tuition. The public schools have more of a breakdown between in-state and out-of-state tuition. Now, UAB is one of the public schools where they do give a scholarship to someone who is not a resident of the state. Now, the lowest cost of tuition for a private school was $29,000, which was in Puerto Rico. And the highest private optometry school was $48,600, which was the Chicago College of Optometry. Most of the private school tuitions, though, were between $40,000 to $43,000. Now, I was a little bit surprised on this next one. The lowest public school amount was $30,700, which was at the Michigan College of Optometry. So their lowest amount is actually higher than the private school. And the highest public school cost of tuition was $55,000, which was at UAB. On average, though, most of theirs fell between $42,000 to $50,000. So I thought the public schools would be a little bit less expensive, but some of them, nah, they're not. So just pay attention to that when it comes to what schools you're considering, and whether or not you are going to be going to private versus public, or if you might be able to get in-state versus out-of-state tuition, but given the limited amount of schools of optometry, chances are you're probably going to be going out of state. Now, the other thing I would caution you to look at too when considering optometry school is, what is the average student loan debt? Couldn't really find a hard and fast number. Most numbers I could find were between like $178,000 to $200,000 worth of student loan debt. But there was a study from Credible in April of 2018, and it did say that ODs have one of the highest debt to income ratios. And you might be like, what? Okay, whatever. What does this even mean? But basically, if you have a high debt to income ratio, that might prevent you from making, like, being able to buy a home or making other large purchases, because lenders are less likely to lend you money because you have a high amount of debt compared to how much money you are actually bringing in. All right, so, and a study by Jobson Optical, which does like a whole bunch of studies all the time or whatever in the optical industry, says that ODs making $110,000 a year, they used about 15% of their income towards student loans. So let's go back and let's put this into perspective or whatever, because I said, remember, you need to take several things into consideration. What kind of modality you're going to be practicing, if you're self-employed, independent contractor. A lot of people are independent contractors, I know, in my area, I would say. But let's take this into consideration. So let's say you are self-employed, you're an independent contractor or whatever, and you're making $100,000 a year. Now, like I said, I'm not a tax consultant or tax expert or anything like that, but let's say you have to pay 30% in taxes. So 30% is already going to taxes because you're self-employed. Now 15% is going to your student loan payments. All right, already that is 45% of your income. All right, 45% of your income. You're like, okay, cool, I can live off 55% of my income. But hold up, wait a minute. We haven't even talked about retirement. Let's say you want to put 15% in retirement. Let's say you need to put another 10% into savings. What about if you have like religious affiliations and stuff like that? Like I know for me, I tithe 10% of my income. If you're trying to do all of that stuff, that is now 80% of your income now, and you make $100K. So can you live off $20,000 a year, which roughly comes out to $1,670 a month? Like, that don't seem like an OD that don't seem like a doctor salary to me. Like, where did my money go? So that's just putting it into perspective for you, and why it's important to take these different things into consideration. Okay, and look into other opportunities when it comes to paying off your student loan. Like, can you do public service? Can you do military service? I actually looked into that when I was in school, because there are you can get military scholarships in school. So look into that. I looked into it. I said, yeah, I passed on it because, yeah, your girl was not ready to die like Biggie Smalls. Like, that is not, I'm not about that life or whatever. Not saying I would be out there on the front lines. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't want to do it. But look into other things that can possibly help pay off your student loans. The other thing I would really want you to consider and think about when it comes to whether or not you want to go to optometry school is, like, why do you even want to be an optometrist? Because it ain't for the money. I'll tell you that right now. But why do you want to be an optometrist? You can make good money on it, but just there's different avenues that you might have to take. So why do you want to be an optometrist? Like, where did this whole idea come from? Who put it in your head? I know, like, growing up, it was like you gotta be, I won't say you have to be, but it was like what was kind of pushed is like doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like, those were like the three professions that you had to be in, that they were saying you would make money in and all this kind of stuff. So did someone else put that in your head? Is that something that your family wanted you to do? Like, who put that in your head? I mean, even in high school, I know, like, you start on this track, like they have a technical track and they have a CP track, college prep, and that's prepping you for college. Like, who even put these kinds of ideas into your head to make you want to do that? And I know some people say, I want to be an optometrist because I want to help people. Like, what does that even mean? Like, you can be a crossing guard. They help people cross the street all day long. Okay, there's different ways you can help people. Like, you're gonna need something stronger than I just want to help people. as your motivation, because you will look at these student loans and you'll look at all this other stuff, and then you need to remember your why, about why you're even doing this, or why you are even considering the profession. The other thing you would want to look at is your work life balance. Like, how many hours a week does an optometrist work, and how does that vary, like, versus if you're in private practice, if you're in a corporate setting, if you're working for an ophthalmologist, if you're working for a hospital. You want to consider those things when it comes to your work life balance. And what is your quality of life? Like, are you able to enjoy other activities, that kind of thing? I know for me personally, I had looked into it because they said that optometry is a pretty flexible career and stuff like that. And it is. It is very, in my experience, it has been very flexible. Like, like, I could pick up a part-time job right now, probably doing fill-in work as an optometrist or whatever. But do I want to do that? Do I want to be working all those different hours? Do I want to have to work at several different places? That kind of thing. I will be honest, I didn't realize how much work private practice is was going to be. I've worked more in like in my own office or whatever than I had probably ever worked before. Like, the amount of hours I put in is crazy. But I remember being told, like, it is a very flexible career. More women are going into the field, which is true. The amount of women is increasing, and you will be able to, be able to stay home with your family, that kind of thing. And you can, but just know that if you do that, like I said, I used my example of what I made my first year was $85,000. By the time I paid, taxes and stuff like that, it's only like a $60,000 salary. So if you do that, you're not gonna, just know the flexibility. You may not make the same amount of money if you were doing it full time, or if you were in a different modality where they didn't need you 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever. So you definitely have to take that into consideration. And the best way to do that is just to do some interning in different areas, different modalities if possible. Also, try to connect with someone who is an optometrist, for those people who are considering going to optometry school, that kind of thing, and look at their life. Like, do they have time for other stuff? Also, do they work another job? Do they have other sources of income? Not to get all up in their business, but why do they have these other sources of income? Is it because optometry is not supplying the necessary money for them, so they are exploring other avenues to bring additional revenue in? Do they enjoy what they're doing, that kind of thing? For me, I do enjoy optometry. I love what I do. I work with a lot of kids because my specialty is pediatrics and vision therapy. I absolutely love what I do. But would I have done things differently? Yeah, your girl would have done things a lot differently, knowing what I know now compared to what I knew back then, to make it a lot easier for me. All right, so is optometry school worth it? I don't know. The jury is still out, and you have to be the one to decide, is it going to be worth it for you? But hopefully this has helped you shed some light on different things that you might not have taken into consideration, because these were things that I did not take into consideration, especially when you look at these different websites which list salaries and that kind of stuff, and it just looks like, oh, they make six figures, they make at least 100K or whatever. Nah, boo boo. There's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you might not consider. All right, well, that is all I have for now. For my fellow ODs out there, do y'all feel optometry school was worth it? For those thinking about going to optometry school, what are your thoughts? Or even my other college graduates and stuff, was school worth it for y'all? Are you working in the field that you want to be in, that kind of thing? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be happy to hear your responses, and if I can help anyone in any way, please let me know. All right, this is your girl Rita, also known as the Gold Digger. Take care, everyone.